Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really fundamental question. Where does our sense of self actually come from? You know, that feeling of who you are. Is it something we're just born with, or is it built, piece by piece, by the world around us? So let's start with a little thought experiment. Just for a second, think about how you see yourself. Are you the funny one, the smart one, maybe a little awkward? Now, how did you get those ideas? Are they 100% your own judgment? Or is something else going on? Well, it turns out sociologists have a fascinating take on this. They argue that who we think we are is shaped by a kind of social mirror. And just like the funhouse mirrors you see here, that reflection isn't always accurate. It can be all bent out of shape, showing us something totally different depending on who we think is looking at us.
This whole idea is wrapped up in a really powerful concept from way back in the early 20th century. A sociologist named Charles Horton Cooley called it the looking glass self.
Okay, so let's break this down. Cooley's big idea was that our self-concept doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. Instead, we're constantly using other people like mirrors. We look at them to get a reflection of who we are, but, and this is the key part, it's not based on what they actually think, but on what we imagine they think. So how does this actually work? Well, it kind of breaks down into 3 steps that happen all the time, super fast. First, we imagine how we look to someone else. Let's say you think you seem really confident giving a presentation. Step 2, you imagine their judgment. You think, wow, they must think I'm so smart. And finally, step 3, you feel something about it. In this case, probably a sense of pride. It's a constant cycle. And here is the real kicker. This whole thing is happening inside your head. It's all based on your perception. So it doesn't really matter if the person you're on a date with actually likes your new shirt. If you think they hate it and you imagine they're judging you for it, that feeling of embarrassment is totally real. Your perception literally creates your emotional reality. But let's be real, not all of these mirrors matter equally, right? The imagined opinion of some random person you pass on the street probably doesn't hit you as hard as what you think your best friend thinks. And there's a term for this, of course. Sociologist Herbert Mead called these really important mirrors our significant others. These are the people whose judgments we value the most, the ones who really shape our self-concept. And, as you can see, who these people are tends to change as we go through life. So, take a second. Who are those people for you right now? Whose praise makes you feel amazing and whose criticism can actually sting? Figuring that out tells you a lot about your own looking glass self. Okay, so this raises a big question, right? How do we even learn to see ourselves through other people's eyes in the first place? Well, Herbert Mead didn't just stop there. He mapped out how we develop this skill right from childhood. He called the process role-taking, and it's pretty much what it sounds like. It's our amazing ability to mentally step into someone else's shoes, to try and see the world and ourselves from their perspective. This skill is the engine that makes the whole looking glass self run. Mead saw this developing in 3 main stages. First up is the imitation stage. Think of a toddler just copying what you do without having a clue what it means. Then comes the play stage. This is when kids play house or doctor, pretending to be one specific person at a time. And finally, we hit the game stage. Think about a game like soccer. You can't just know your own position, you have to understand what the goalie, the defenders, and the forwards are all going to do at the same time. And this process, learning to juggle all these different roles at once, it builds up to something huge in our social development. This is where we make a really critical jump. We go from worrying about what, say, mom or our teacher thinks, to understanding what people in general think. We basically learn the unwritten rules of the giant game we call society. Mead had a brilliant name for this, the generalized other. It's basically our internalized sense of what the community or society expects from us. You can think of it as society's voice, but it's living inside our own head. It's the thing that tells you to wait your turn in line, even when nobody you know is around. And this is why this is so important. This generalized other is what lets us have a moral compass and a set of principles to live by. We behave in certain ways not just to please specific people, but because we've absorbed the general values of our culture. All right, this brings us to the final, and maybe the most fascinating piece of the puzzle, that constant conversation we're always having with ourselves. So, according to Mead, the self isn't just one thing. Nope. He saw it as this constant, lively conversation happening inside us, a back and forth between 2 different parts that he called the I and the me. On one side, you've got the I. That's your spontaneous, impulsive, gut reaction. It's the part of you that just wants what it wants right now. And then there's the me. The me is the socialized self. It's the part that's been listening to your parents, your friends, and that generalized other. It's that voice of society in your head. Let's make this super simple. Imagine you're in a store. The I part of you sees a candy bar and thinks, yum, I want that. I'm just going to take it. But then the me jumps in and says, whoa, hold on a second. Remember what happens when people steal? There are consequences, rules, social norms. Your final action is basically the outcome of that little debate.
And that leaves us with one last, really interesting question to think about for yourself. In that constant chatter between your impulsive I and your socialized me, who usually gets the final say? And what does that tell you about the self you show to the world every single day?